Welcome to a deep dive into, well, the absolute fundamental blueprints of the universe. If you need a rapid yet deep conceptual refresher on core physics, chemistry, and biology, this is definitely it. We've synthesized a pretty massive stack of sources covering foundational science curricula.
Yeah, and our mission today is really to cut through all that data density. We're not here for, a textbook quiz. We're looking for the essential knowledge nuggets, stuff ranging from the forces that hold an ice cube together all the way up to agricultural sustainability. We want to find those structural connections between these scientific domains.
Okay, let's unpack this scientific deep dive then, starting right at the foundation, the composition and motion of matter itself.
Right, so when we define the three primary states, solid, liquid, and gas, the critical difference isn't just like shape or volume, it's the internal arrangement and, crucially, the strength of the intermolecular forces holding the particles together.
Okay, so if you're looking at an ice cube, the structure's rigid because those internal forces are really strong, locking the particles in place.
Precisely. That strength dictates a fixed shape and volume. Now, apply energy, say, heat, and those forces weaken. That allows things to flow, which gives you a liquid. Apply enough energy, and those forces become incredibly weak, almost non-existent, really. Then the particles just move freely, randomly. That's a gas. It'll fill any container you put it in.
And we can actually see this concept of random motion even when the matter seems still. The process of diffusion is one of the best examples, I think.
It really is. Think about gases. You light an incense stick in the corner of a large room. Within moments, you notice the fragrance way across the room. That rapid spread happens because gas particles have significant kinetic energy. They're constantly colliding, moving freely across the whole space.
Right, just bouncing around. And it's the same basic principle, just slower when we look at liquids. Like if you drop copper sulfate crystals into a beaker of water, that blue color spreads out gradually, even without stirring.
Exactly. Slower, but yeah, the crystal particles are slowly diffusing because of their own inherent motion, moving out into the liquid structure.
Okay. Now, once we start mixing things, we need to categorize them, right? Because not every uniform looking blend is actually the same. And this distinction relies entirely on the size of the particles involved, doesn't it?
That's the key. True solutions, like perfectly dissolved salt water, they're homogeneous. The solute and solvent are totally indistinguishable, even under like high magnification.
Right. But what happens when the particles are slightly bigger?
That's where you hit the sweet spot for colloids. Their particles are large enough to interfere with light. This is called the Tyndall effect. The classic demo is taking milk, a perfect colloid, and shining a flashlight through it in a dark box. You actually see the beam path because the milk particles are scattering the light.
That visibility is the clue. It's not a true solution. And if the particles get even bigger, then the system becomes unstable. That leads us to suspensions.
Exactly. Suspensions have particles that are so large that gravity basically overcomes their random motion. If you mix sand into water, the particles eventually settle to the bottom if you just leave it alone. That gravitational settling is the fundamental difference between a suspension and a colloid.
Okay. Speaking of forces and motion, let's zoom out a bit from the microscopic world. Let's look at the physical rules that govern larger objects, the bedrock of classical physics.
Yeah, we're talking about analyzing linear movement here. The core physics principles let us calculate an object's position and velocity. The math can look a bit dense, sure, but the main insight is that these rules let us predict the future state of a moving object, provided, and this is key, it's under constant acceleration. They're basically the reliable tools for mapping movement from point A to point B.
What I always found tricky learning this was distinguishing between average speed and average velocity. It sounds like splitting hairs sometimes, but it's actually critical.
It really is. Speed is just the rate of distance covered that's a scalar quantity, just a number. Velocity, though, is speed plus direction. It's a vector. So the only time your average speed is numerically equal to your average velocity is when your path is completely straight. No change in direction at all. Like if you drive from your house to the store and back again, your average speed is high, obviously. But your average velocity, because you ended up back where you started, it's zero.
Huh. Right. That concept of direction and movement leads us straight to that fundamental law about resistance, Newton's first law.
Inertia. Yeah, it's elegant in its simplicity, isn't it? An object resists any change in its current state of motion, whether that's being at rest or moving at a constant velocity, unless an unbalanced force acts on it. You know, when your coffee mug sits still on the table. It's inertia that keeps it there until you actually push it.
And when that force is applied and objects interact, That's where the law of conservation of momentum comes in.
Oh yeah, this is one of the most powerful concepts in physics. If you have a closed system, meaning no outside forces messing with it, the total momentum before an interaction has to equal the total momentum afterward. Basically, the sum of the mass times velocity for all objects stays constant. The classic visual is two ice skaters pushing off each other on, like, frictionless ice. They move apart, sure, but the momentum of the whole system has been perfectly conserved, just transferred between them.
It's pretty incredible how these foundational rules structure force motion conservation scale up from the tiny stuff to the things we see every day.
Mhm.
Let's use those rules as a bridge now, moving from the inanimate world to the living machinery that, well, still has to obey them.
Okay, so we transition now to biology, and we focus on the fundamental unit of life,
Hmm.
the cell. It's defined as both the structural and functional unit of life.
Why both terms? Why are both necessary? Can't we just call it the functional unit?
Well, it serves a dual purpose, really. Structurally, it's the smallest organized package of matter that's capable of independent life. And functionally, it has to perform all the necessary life tasks. Metabolism, growth,
Yeah.
respiration, getting rid of waste. It's the whole package, self-sustaining. And then in complex organisms, these cells reproduce to build specialized, complex machinery, tissues, organs, and so on.
That complexity leads us to the core distinction, prokaryotes versus eukaryotes. This seems like a division based on internal management style.
Huh. That's actually a great analogy. It is about compartmentalization. Think of a prokaryote like a bacterium as a simple open-plan workshop. It lacks a defined nucleus, so its genetic material just kind of floats freely, and it doesn't have internal membrane-bound organelles. Everything happens in one main space, basically.
Okay, whereas a eukaryote is more like the fully equipped factory.
Precisely. Eukaryotes have a well-defined nucleus. That's the centralized management office, if you like. And they have specialized membrane-bound organelles. These are the separate workshops. Mitochondria handle power generation. Chloroplasts handle solar energy capture in plants. This compartmentalization allows for much more advanced, specific biochemical functions.
Okay, now that we've built the unit, let's see how these cells organize into specialized tissues. There's a fascinating divide here between plants and animals that seems dictated almost entirely by lifestyle, by movement.
It's a direct consequence of mobility and energy budgets. Plants are stationary, right? They need stability and strength to fight gravity and wind. Since they don't need to move their tissues rapidly or expend tons of energy doing it, their supportive tissues, like the fibers in xylem or sclerenchyma, are often composed of dead cells.
And why is dead actually a benefit for structure here?
Because maintaining life requires constant energy input metabolism. If a cell is dead, it has zero metabolic demand. Its thick cell walls provide maximum rigid support at, well, low cost. It's an energy trade-off.
Right, whereas animals are mobile. They demand high energy and really rapid responses.
Exactly. So animal functional tissues, muscle for movement, nervous tissue for communication, they absolutely must possess living protoplasm. That's needed to facilitate that immediate high-energy response. The contrast is totally driven by the need for quick coordination versus the need for static, long-term support.
And the ultimate specialized structure for that high-speed coordination has to be the neuron.
Oh, neurons are fascinating machines. Their structure, the cell body, the long axon, the branching dendrites, it's entirely optimized for rapid unidirectional signal transmission. Their critical function is transmitting electrical impulses throughout the body, ensuring almost instantaneous sensory response and coordinating every complex action an animal performs.
That speed is just crucial for survival, isn't it? Linking stimulus and response almost seamlessly.
Okay, so we've moved from the forces governing a single molecule through the complexity of the living cell. Now let's apply these scientific principles to maybe the most immediate global challenge: food resources and agricultural sustainability. Right. Improving crop variety is absolutely foundational for food security. The goal isn't just growth, it's ensuring crops are resilient enough to handle, climate volatility and also are highly efficient.
The sources outline 3 specific targeted traits scientists focus on during crop breeding. We all know the first one, higher productivity per acre, just getting more yield from less land.
The second is resilience, and that breaks down into 2 types: resistance to biotic and abiotic stresses. Biotic stress means living threats, things like pests and diseases. Abiotic stress means non-living, environmental threats, think drought, extreme heat, or high soil salinity. A successful crop has to withstand both.
And the third trait is simply better quality, increasing the essential nutritional content, like more protein in pulses or getting more oil out of oil seeds, plus Plus, strategically developing varieties with a short maturity duration seems key.
Oh, absolutely. That short duration increases efficiency dramatically. If a crop reaches maturity faster, a farmer could potentially grow 2, maybe even 3 crops annually on the same piece of land. It maximizes resource use.
This strategic efficiency brings us to that crucial discussion of soil health. Manures versus fertilizers. They both feed the plants, obviously, but their long-term impact on the soil structure itself is profoundly different.
Yeah, fertilizers are synthetic, factory produced. They're engineered for high concentrations of specific nutrients: nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, the NPK stuff. They provide a rapid nutrient boost, for sure, but if you overuse them, they can actually degrade the soil's physical structure over time.
Manures, on the other hand, are natural organic additions. They generally have lower nutrient concentration, right? But they're rich in humus.
And humus is really the secret ingredient here. It's decomposed organic matter. It doesn't just feed the plant, it fundamentally improves the soil structure,
Yeah.
makes it more porous, dramatically increases its ability to hold water.
So we circle right back to structure, just like we did with the ice cube way back at the start. For the long-term viability and health of the agricultural ecosystem, manures are better because they reinforce the actual structural integrity of the soil itself.
That structural connection ties everything together, doesn't it? The goal of sustainable food production relies on maintaining the physical structure of the earth, which in turn feeds the biological machinery, the cells that operate under the laws of physics and chemistry we started with.
Here's where it gets really interesting, I think. We've gone from the strong internal forces holding matter together through the energy demands of a living cell, right up to the global challenge of feeding ourselves sustainably.
And what's truly fascinating is how intertwined this all is. I mean, the efficiency gains in agriculture that was segment 3 are entirely dependent on our understanding of cellular function from segment 2, which itself is governed by the principles of force and motion we established way back in segment 1. It all connects.
Yeah, we established that conservation of momentum governs a collision between ice skaters, and that cell compartmentalization is essential for growth and energy use.
So if we step back and think about it, what important question does that fundamental science of inertia raise when we consider the difficulty in shifting global agricultural practices toward long-term soil health? I mean, if the law states an object resists a change in motion unless an unbalanced force acts on it, we have to ask ourselves, what is the unbalanced force required to change massive, entrenched farming practices? That's the kind of structural resistance, that inertia we have to overcome.
A perfect place to leave you with that thought for your own deep dive. Thank you for guiding us through these fundamentals today.